Today we're going to talk about the whole wearable space. We're going to talk about fitness trackers. We're going to talk about the accuracy. We're going to talk about motivating behaviour. The reason why I played that little piece there, I love that it was presented to us. And the final quote there is what's really sinks home. The more people know, the more data they see, the more educated they are to take the right actions for them to get one step closer towards their goals. It's the whole space of wearables. It's the whole space of technology in this massive environment. And when we look at technology, and technology is not new. We're sort of like anyone that's from the health, fitness and space, it's been around forever. And the whole point about it is, it's a body of knowledge used to create tools, develop skills and extract or collect materials, and the application to solve a problem. Now, the science behind, the whole wearable space centres around the very first part, which is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So once you've got food and shelter, the sense of belonging, the sense of connection, the social connection is really hot. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere. And that technology is filling that social connection. So the whole technology is bringing that Maslow's hierarchy, basic needs to the forefront. And we're doing that in a time-poor world. So if that technology can connect us in a frictionless, simple way, then you're going to start to get some traction in the world. Now, there's two things that really changed this whole space: the mobile phone or the smartphone and the cloud technology. Okay, the phone has been, with obviously as sensors and semiconductors have got smaller, the data transfer has been a lot quicker. We've been able to, that phone has been able to process information at an extraordinary pace. And then the cloud has been able to disseminate that knowledge in milliseconds around the world. And that's the real key, what's made the huge difference in this space. Typically, if you're doing some form of monitoring, it would have to be on site. And it would have to be on site with big, expensive equipment. And that big, expensive equipment would have to be local, on local servers. And for that data, USB in, and then you'd have to go somewhere else to get the data. Now, the cloud has just opened that up. And it's opened that market up. So therefore, we've got the mobile devices here. The apps, it's the rise of the apps. Because that phone, as the data comes in, it can actually process that information with algorithms and new apps that's subsequently meant the rise in the fitness app world. And when we look at the space, it's 5.1 billion in revenue, 2015. So it's not just the actual the application, but it's also the technology as well, the hardware as well. And it's estimated to hit 80 billion revenue by 2020. Now, for the last 25, 26 years, I've been involved in the health and fitness sector. That's the market that we've sort of like transformed from. To put it into perspective, it's taken us 40 to 45 years to hit $80 billion in revenue. The wearable market's going to hit that in a little over 8 years. That same type of revenue. And it's just astronomical. And the whole purpose is that quantified self, that sense of motivation, being able to motivate people to actually do a little bit more. We are in that era where people are surrounded by Google, where you're brought up by basically going, to find the answers yourself. And with the likes of the wearable tech, people taking control of their own destiny rather than having to wait to see the doctor. Why can't I just Google what my problem is? And the big things that are sort of like circling around that is that whole feedback, that motivation, the objective data. That objective data, not subjective, not, hey, the coach says do this, but then you go to another coach, the coach says this. You might see it in body fat analyzers where you do a caliper test to do a skin fold. You could actually, one person do a skin fold test, another person do a skin fold test, and you have a 4% difference. You go back and do it, and so therefore the subjectiveness of the data. And so this is what technology is bringing to the forefront. And what's to blame is dopamine. The whole thing of habit formation, habit creation, and breaking the habit. The whole thing of the dopamine, the habit cycle, is that you have this stimulus. When you get this stimulus, you might be on the tube and you're a little bit bored. And then, so you've got that internal cue of saying, I'm a little bit bored on the tube, then you've got an urge to check your phone. You know, I challenge someone to not check their phone for 10 minutes nowadays. You know, you have that urge of go, oh, you know, there's actually a mophobia is actually a technical term. You know, it was quite funny, when 1983, when the mobile came out, there was a big scare about, oh, you're going to lose the connection. You know, you want to see the whites of people's eyes. Now you've got a thing called mophobia, where people, when you're out of Wi-Fi, we've got a flat battery, or you left your phone at home, you've got this anxiety. But so you have that, you have the urge. Once you have the urge, then you do the action, you check your emails, and then, oh, there's a good email, and then you actually have that release of dopamine. That release of dopamine might be, oh, actually, hey, that was an email that I'm glad I found out about that now, or saves me having to check that a bit later on. I'm ahead of my work. So you've got that, you know, that dopamine that's released, and then you get that stimulant again. It might be a notification, the push notification and all this, to be able to do that dopamine rush. This is the whole thing of creating, the science of creating habits. You know, and so with the wearables and the technology, you know, it's there to motivate, engage, and connect you. Motivate you to do something, engage you whilst you do it, and then connect you either whilst you're doing it or away from the actual the environment, so that therefore it motivates that dopamine to go and do that again. But there are three things that have really pushed this whole sector forward. The first one is the healthcare crisis. There's three numbers to remember, 3, 4, 50. There's three lifestyle factors, diet, smoking, and inactivity, that are responsible for 4 risk factors: lung disease, heart disease, diabetes, and many cancers, that are responsible for 50% of the deaths every single year. They're called NCDs, non-communicable diseases. You cannot catch type 2 diabetes. Now, this impact on society, you know, the NHS, which is planning to be bust by 2056. You know, there's no more money there. So when 50% of the actual deaths of the world every single day are controllable, that are preventable, that's the reason why the whole world is starting to look at what can we do, you know, to actually solve this problem. And then you've got the corporate social responsibility. This is a funny one. Obviously, Steve Jobs, if you haven't recognised down the bottom there, didn't really like IBM at the time, but then IBM went and bought a Apple Watch for all its employees. The whole corporate social response as an employer, you know, that sense of taking control of the health of your thing. You can talk about absenteeism, you can talk about presentism, but the whole thing of, you know, if people are healthier, they work harder, then you make more money. And then also it's the customer acquisition cost. And this customer acquisition cost is important, and the lifetime value of your database. You know, Strava still doesn't make money, but it will do in the long term. Amazon doesn't make money, but it will do in the long time. But the cost of acquisition right now is they're building that member base so they can leverage off that revenue a little bit later on. And this is the whole thing in regards to the cost of acquiring a customer, and then once you've achieved that, then to actually cross-sale. It's the reason why Under Armour, on only $4 billion of revenue, he says, spent a quarter of their revenue. It took 8 years to get that, on acquiring MyFitnessPal, $1 billion almost, MyFitnessPal, Endomondo. And why is that? Is because what they want to do is they want to sell, and Kevin Plank goes out, don't forget to sell t-shirts and shoes. T-shirts and shoes. That's the whole point. You build that database up, you know, and the whole technology of, you know, finding out when your shoes are running out, then being able to send a push notification to be able to say, hey, your shoes are running out, come and buy another one. And that's what they're doing. But the interesting thing about this information is a lot of the data has been there. I'm not too sure if you've heard of OBD, onboard diagnostics, which is a computer for cars. So you know how, you know, previously you'd be able to go into the mechanic and the mechanic would lift up the boot and sit there and tinker around and say, oh, I think it's your brake discs and I think it's this, and then provide the solution. Nowadays, what do? You roll your car in, they plug the laptop in, and there you go. Yep, the objective data technology feeds out and says, yep, your brakes at 4% data less. The interesting thing, onboard diagnostics has been compulsory in every single new car in America since 1996. It's been compulsory. But what's changed has been the mobile phone, the cloud, to be able to easily access that data. You know, we look at this for, you know, golf analytics and biometric data for human anatomy, for training, and that's been around forever. But now with the algorithms that are imposed on the apps to be able to analyze your swing and then provide corrective advice, that's where it's at. This is the hot one, and it's the data aggregation. Who has the most data? They're the ones win. Google, Apple, Samsung are fighting it out massively right now. You know, everyone's trying to build their own ecosystem, but it's pretty hard. You know, and those that say they know Google can sit there and tell you, right, it's time to leave for your train now. It's 15 minutes late. Send you a push notification without you putting in any information, just by using the location services, following your behaviour and saying you normally catch this train from, you know, Houston Station at, you know, 6:15, you get a push notification to say, yeah, your train's running 12 minutes late. That's the type of data and the data analytics which is important. But the longer that you stay in that, the longer that you stay in, you know, the Apple ecosystem or whatever, the more likely they can actually sell you more devices down the track. Now, the big thing in regards to any form of wearable and that, it's got to be a frictionless experience. Water, that's my cue to remind me, it can't be a pain in the ass. If something's a pain in the ass, you basically stop, put it down, you know. But it's got to be frictionless. It's got to be easy to understand. That's what Amazon do. And whenever I work from home, Amazon is a testament that my wife experiences shopping like there's no other by pressing the one click, buy this, buy this. But they've made it easy. And so in any form of wearables or technology, it's got to be frictionless. If there's any form of, you know, my 3-year-old can pick up an iPad, unlock it, and go on and do Minecraft that I do have no bloody idea what is, but can do it. You know, with no user manual, no 7-step instruction, but just by having it, being able to handle the actual experience itself. Now, the ugly secrets of wearables, which is quite interesting, is that within 24 months, over 50% of people stop using it. Now, everyone goes, that is terrible. It's terrible, but from the health and fitness sector, there's 120 million members, 50% of all people quit every single year. So if you've got, you know, 20,000 health club members, at the end of 1 year, 10,000 people will leave. So, but the difference in the technology and the wearable sector is that it's changing because the analytics have been able to find that data, analyze the actual behavior and try and change it. And that's the one thing, and they can do that by algorithms. Now, when we talk about physical activity, this is the one thing that I want to sort of like get across. There are 2 forms of physical activity: incidental activity and concerted activity, okay? Incidental activity is steps. It's getting off the bus 1 step early. It's walking up the stairs instead of, you know, getting on the lift. Incidental activity is what, or concerted activity. Now, the reason why that's important, what defines physical activity is this: 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity in bouts of 10 minutes or more. So when people talk about we're a physical activity monitor, the thing that defines physical activity is that 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous. It's not 10,000 steps or 2,000 jiggles of a jiggle machine. It's simple, based on 150 minutes of, and that's worldwide. That's the WHO guidelines on physical activity. But, you know, you've got to understand whether your, you know, the device that you've got is incidental or whether it's dealing with concerted. An Apple Watch that you're wearing all day that's just, you know, how many active minutes, that's the incidental. When you start going into concerted activity, as you know, with the Apple Watch, it obviously doesn't work at higher intensities, so that's why it takes a Bluetooth signal from a heart rate belt. And when we look at the space from less accurate to more accurate, the first pedometer was actually brought out by, not too long ago, Leonardo da Vinci in the 15th century. He was using that to make maps, right? Now then you've got moved on to the accelerometers, optical blood flow. Obviously the optical blood flow is not measuring, it's guessing, because it's shining a light through the capillaries of the vein, and so it's predicting what the actual heart is doing. Then you have what you call motion artifact removal. Motion artifact is if you've got blood slushing through your wrist, then there's that noise that's slushing through. So there's algorithms that will remove that noise. And that's awesome if it is a predictable and repeatable movement of the wrist. And that's why I think Fitbit maybe got in a little, they got a little bit of a hard time by basically saying, they've got on their website, they say we're not accurate. Over 85% we're not accurate. If you flex your wrist, we're not accurate. If you do movement such as swing a kettlebell, do a P90X, do anything that's an irregular, unpredictable movement of the wrist, we're not accurate, right? So that's, so they should be sort of like given a little bit of a free kick from that, because they've gone out and said, we're not accurate. Where they got into a little bit of trouble is because what they were advertising was the actual activity where they know that they're not accurate, and that's where they got into a little bit of trouble with that. But there are 3 steps for wearables to work, because everyone has the plan, but then life gets in way. So when we look at, firstly, you've got to be motivated to wear it, and you've got to afford it, right? First, it's as simple as that. We've got the early adopters and all this. With technology, it's broken down to 3 things. Is it oxygen? Is it medicine? Or is it jewelry? Oxygen, must you have it? I must have a watch because I need to know the time. For me, I've always had a watch. I've always needed to know the time. Does it solve a problem? Yes, it does solve a problem because I need to know what the time is. Is it jewelry? Do I need to have, if I start buying a £50,000 Patek Philippe watch, it's not oxygen medicine, that is a jewelry purchase. Okay, with wearables, the big thing is to move from a jewelry, a like to have, to a necessity, to either solve the problem because you're in AF and you worry about your heart, or to create an oxygen where it is something that you must have because it's linked to insurance. Then you've got to remember to wear it. A lot of the devices out there, I sort of like don't call them, fitness trackers, I call them fitness reminders. Because if looking at my wrist reminds me to exercise, guess what? It's done the job. Just the same as tying a ribbon around your finger. How long to see that ribbon on the finger until you're actually desensitized and it doesn't. And then accurately track its targeted behavior. And this is the big thing in regards to it. So fit for purpose. An actual body weight scales is a measuring device, but it is absolutely useless if you want to measure length. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. You've just got to understand what you're actually measuring. So if you want to measure your resting heart rate at the start of the day, if you want to measure the distance, GPS from A to 1, yeah, that's fine. But you've just got to, I think it's a lot of it is to do in regards to the communication and for people who've got to understand. Now this is where the future lies in regards to wearables. And that is in regards to the data analytics and the machine learning. So the more information that you have, the more data, credible data that's fed into the system, the more outcomes, and the machine can actually learn and start prescribing. Frank, you have done this for the last 30 days. We've noticed a behavior change in your usage or whatever. So what we need to do is we need to change your prescriptive approach from here. That whole thing that's where the future's going to lie. Collecting the data, but then prescribing it, rather than having to go to a doctor, rather than having to go to a personal trainer, rather than having to go to a gym per se, it automatically prescribes the data. And that's when it's so leverageable, it's completely leverageable and scalable, but it also can be adapted and it can be disseminated simply. You can have coaches, computer coaches anywhere in the world based on your data. And I mean, the one thing that we did with Myzone, we had a two-pronged approach. We created a B2B, a data aggregation system that feeds into all other, so that it helps networks attract new customers and then obviously increase the yield per member. But our overall objective is this one on the right, to increase the adherence to exercise. Not, here's a device, 6 months' time, buy another device, another 6 months' time. Our whole objective and our platform is being built around the sustainability of exercise. Because if we do that, then the networks are saying, okay, if we have got someone that's exercising for a longer period of time, then the byproduct is they're going to be healthier at work or at play, and therefore the health costs are going to go down. We did this utilising, obviously, the Myzone chest strap, or our new sports bra and t-shirt powered by Sensoria, is the ability of identifying effort. Because a lot of trackers out there are all about distance over time, which is great if you're in the first 2%. That's fantastic. But the issue is that it's not all typical devices are not rewarding effort over time. Because every single one of us could go for a run around the Excel building, back, same pace, same distance, roughly the same age or thereabouts. Physiologically impossible for us to have the same experience. Physiologically impossible. But that's what we're doing every single day. What we did is we flipped it on its ass and focused on the one thing, which is the SAID principle. The SAID principle is one of the number one training methodologies, the specific adaptation of imposed demand. If I jump on a treadmill and I go for a walk at 5 miles an hour for 20 minutes, the way my body adapts to that imposed demand is my effort level decreases, right? And so therefore, rather than just doing 5 miles for 20 minutes, 5 miles for 20 minutes, let's do effort over time. And effort over time is almost like a golf handicap on physical activity. And we've tied that in regards to the World Health Organization guidelines. So every single month that you achieve the WHO guidelines, you actually move towards another goal. You move towards another status. So whether it's 1 month you become iron, 3 months bronze, 6 months silver, all the way up to diamond, and we've got Hall of Famers. And the whole point is, okay, you're on that track. Let's just keep you going. Let's keep you moving forward towards a goal in line with the World Health Organization guidelines. And the interoperability and versatility is important for any form of device. And that's why we've sort of done something a little bit different, is we've added every protocol communication in there. So if you step on an old treadmill, it will talk to that. If you use your Garmin, it'll talk to that. If you use Strava, Apple Watch, Android Watch, the whole point is the frictionless experience for a user so that it can feed into all platforms, but also we have the memory capability, so it stores to memory so that when you don't even have to have a device. So when you come back in range of a receiver or a device, it automatically uploads and creates that cloud-based platform for the users. So when we talk about wearables, this is the final and I suppose most important part of this slide. If the value, and this is just anything, if the value outweighs the cost, you get the deal every single time. Whether it's buying a new car, whether it's buying a new phone, whether it's buying a new wearable. And the value and the cost is not just the price, right? The battery is the hottest thing. I mean, it's the number one thing that's going to, the hardest thing that we have. But you put up with a battery on your phone that goes flat in 6 hours because the benefit and the value that you get out of it from the actual emails and your phones and all this, counteracts that cost of no battery. But this is where it's going to sit in the future. The rewards, the social connections, the information that you get. That there is that if any form of wearable, accurate or inaccurate, if it achieves this for you, then you're more likely to get the results. Bang on time there, Simon. So thank you very much for your time. I hope you found that enjoyable in a whistle-stop tour. But thank you very much for your time.